Yo, what's up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we've got another science video for you, and today in the crosshairs is Bestiary, pushing it to the limit and seeing how much we can earn from it. There's tons of stuff to break down, but of course this is a bit more in terms of a higher budget, but I guarantee you there's going to be different discoveries here which are going to help you out in every level of play. So if you're low budget, high budget, any budget, you will have content in here for you to upgrade your gameplay. Let me break it down for you and take you through it. So of course, we've got our map of choice here, Cemetery. And of course, when rolling them, we've got 100 of them and we've gone ahead and chiseled them, alked them, and volved them. And I haven't worried too much about the map rolls because, my build can do most of the rolls. So that's kind of the setup we've got there. Let me take you through why we picked Cemetery. Well, first of all, we're testing a new tactic. Previously, in our last video, we established that killing the boss first in City Square and doing all of the Eldritch altars was very profitable. This time, we're doing the reverse. We are going to kill all the monsters and then the boss and see how many Eldritch, Exalt, Annuls, and Chaos Orbs we can extract out of 100 maps to kind of compare the two and see which one is more profitable. So that's why Cemetery, it's a pretty damn good map, it's pretty linear, and you can leave the boss till last without having too many issues. But in addition to that, Cemetery also has a ton of good divination cards. It has the Brothers Stash, namely, which is pretty damn strong, we could get one of those, and it also has the new Skittering or Delirium Orb card, which drops off of the boss, making Cemetery a reasonably strong pick. Now, to bolster our strategy and further be able to test Bestiary, we have a suite of scarabs that we're going to be using here. So, market forces have been in work, and Harbinger is now more worth it than ever, which is ironic because in our previous video, we were really seeing that Harbinger at the rusted level was ridiculous. We were making a ton of currency, and it was really just overpaying for itself by many times. So overall, Harbinger is going to be again making a comeback. We're going to have Polished this time though. We've upgraded from rusted, invested a little bit more in Polished, and in addition to that, we're going to be running Harbinger on Keyrack due to the fact that it's just so damn good. If you guys didn't know, Ancient Orbs have gone from about 4 Chaos to 10 to 12 Chaos even. So overall, I was selling them today, 10 Ancient Orbs to 1 Exalt, so pretty damn good. Overall, Ancient Orbs, big increase, so we're going to be running Harbinger and seeing how far we can push that with a number of different mechanics here. So Harbinger is on there as a Scarab, polished variety. In addition to that, we've also seen another big market movement on maps. Some map layouts are now selling for upwards of 8 to 9C, specifically City Square, and we're going to try and cash in on that with some gilded cartography scarabs, which are definitely not too expensive and are going to work nicely with our upgraded Harbinger strategy to hopefully give us a ton of map sustain, beating out what we got before on City Square, giving us even more profits. Now, in the crosshairs here, Bestiary, of course it makes sense to use the gilded variety. These are reasonably cheap right now, and overall it complements our new strategy quite well. We're going to be running gilded Bestiary scarabs, which are going to give us the most red beasts possible, which is going to synergize fantastically with what we're aiming to test here. Now, of course, we've got one slot left, and I opted for Legion, as I think that Cemetery is a fantastic Legion map, and Legions are known to be one of the best mechanics to sustain your maps. Overall, it drops a ton of maps, and that's going to synergize great with our map strategy as well as our more multipliers from the gilded cartography scarab. In addition to that, we had some spare points left over as well, so we spec'd those in the Atlas tree into Legion. But, of course, we need to push things further. We need to push the envelope here, and we're going to make use of the new charged compasses to spice things up. So, overall, I have 25 of each compass here, which are ready, primed, and ready to go for each of the maps. So this top line here that I have here are all just generic compasses I've rolled myself just to get, some pack size on there because I didn't really have a fourth compass that I wanted to run in this scenario. So overall, it's just a random compass I rolled myself. And this is going to be important when I get to the Atlas passive tree, but they're all 4 charges. They're just anything that I could get. just rolling some sextants. So not too bad there. The next one, let's push our harbingers even further. So this one basically states that unique bosses are accompanied by a mysterious harbinger, which is pretty damn good. So it's an extra harbinger. And also that boss drops additional currency shards, essentially turning the boss into a harbinger. And also it multiplies the amount of currency shards dropped from other harbingers, adding additional stacks to them, meaning it synergizes fantastically with what we've got going on here, because we've got 1 base harbinger, 2 from Kirak, and 3 from our polished harbinger scarabs, giving us 6, and then we get an additional one from our sextant here, giving us 7, and then the boss drops them as well, so almost 8 effective harbingers. Pretty damn cool. I wonder how many exalts we're going to get from that. I have no idea. Anyway, moving on. Next sextant we've got going on here is, of course, a mandatory one. To push Bestiary to its limits, we needed the 100% chance to create a copy of beasts captured in areas. And of course, we have them all. We've got all of these ready to go, and we are going to be pumping them and seeing how many valuable beasts we can get our hands on. Lastly, we have here, we've got an additional Legion encounter. So when we get to the Atlas passive tree in a second here, you are going to see that we're pretty heavily invested in Legion as well. So getting an additional Legion encounter is definitely what we're looking for here. And it's going to add some extra juice to our maps overall as well. So that is going to be the layout of all of the juice that we're putting on our maps. It's a lot of investment, I know, but there's going to be a lot of lessons in here, which is going to teach us how we can apply this on the high end and the low end and min-max it all. And we'll have those findings, obviously, when future me runs all of these maps. Anyway, let's dive into the Atlas passive tree, quickly go over the expenses, and then I'll pass you over to future me in the gameplay section. All right, so we've got the usual candidates here. We've got our boxes, we've got our essences, and of course, we've got our harbingers and the map notes. Nothing's changed here. And overall, these are kind of cookie cutter at this point. We have had to drop our extra shrine here because we're strapped for points and we just wanted to get so much. Now, that's just fine. Another thing that we've dropped from our usual tree is Enduring Influence, which gives us additional sextant use, but because we're buying our sextant modifiers, this doesn't matter, and you can save the extra points and invest in some more league mechanics, which is exactly what we've done. Overall, what's new? Well, we've taken all of the good bestiary nodes here, and I'll point out the ones that are particularly impactful. So probably the strongest ones on the tree is this one down here, the big game nodes. So this one is like a little bit deceptive of how good it is, but it adds 2 additional yellow beasts just off of the small nodes. Fantastic. And these beasts then have a chance to be converted into red beasts with big game. So big game is going to convert, 2 of those maybe, into red beasts, which is damn strong. Now, in addition to that though, it also has a chance at converting all of the other yellow beasts in your map to red beasts as well. Overall, giving you a lot higher chance at getting a ton of red beasts, which are the valuable ones. All right, so we're getting some yellow beasts and more red beasts there. Over here, we have natural selection, a massively important one, which is going to basically give you the more rare beasts in your maps. And here, I've opted to take every single bestiary red beast chance to try and get more red beasts available to us and get more of them in our maps. And now, I've only just opted to go for the Hunt of the Cresciani here, due to the fact that the Crescian ones are the most valuable, but that's going to be for future me to talk about when we get to the profit breakdown, as we'll go over all the beasts, how much we made, and how much they're worth. Over here, the final bestiary nodes we took were Great Migration, as well as 8% chance for beasts to appear in pairs, which is very, very noticeable when you're mapping. So overall, this is going to give you a chance at a big Einhar Great Migration, which is pretty damn good. It's going to make all of these beasts just flood the map, and you're going to get a ton of them, which is absolutely fantastic. And it just puts beasts everywhere, which is pretty damn good. Now, overall, the only nodes we haven't opted to take down here is Animal Companion, because that doesn't give us anything really here because we're using scarabs, and only what we're losing is the chance to copy a beasts. Now, I'm not sure if this double copies beasts with the sextant modifier, but I was assuming that it might not work, so I've decided to save the points here and invest in our other lead mechanic that we've got going on here, which is Legion. So Legion is definitely a big money maker. Overall, its nodes are some of the strongest on the tree, and we've opted to take all of the best ones. So let me draw your attention to the main ones here. So overall, the highest quality Legion nodes on the tree are these 2 small nodes here, which give you a 0.2% chance to drop a timeless emblem instead of a splinter, and obviously emblematic, which further takes that up to a 1% chance. This is effectively 100% more splinters overall, which is pretty good. We've also taken the increased chance to Maraketh and Templar, as well as War war supplies, as that gives you some additional warhords. Overall, those are pretty damn good and quite strong. Furthermore, we've taken the chain of command, as you know, that gives you some extra sergeants, which drop splinters, which could turn into emblems, and also some additional rewards, which could be incubators, which are very, very powerful and lucrative. Lastly, we have opted to take protracted battle, just so that I can fully break out the Legion and get you guys some consistent results without having to worry about missing 1 or 2 generals, and we can, you know, make sure we don't lose out on our Gilded Legion Scarab value. Overall, we didn't have to sacrifice much for this. We lost shrines, the Sextant mods, beyond, and we did lose 1 node of pack size. It is what it is, but overall, I think this is a pretty optimized tree, and you'll be able to find it down below if you want. Well, that's everything I've got for you guys on the prep side of things. Let's take a quick look at the expenses and see how deep we are in, because it's quite expensive, but I'm almost certain we're going to make most of this back. So our maps cost us 500 C, although I farmed these myself for free. Our chisels cost us 31 C, our Bile Orbs 50 C, and Alchemy Orbs 10 C. Now, all the compasses in total. So the random compasses took 135 C for me to roll myself. However, I did get some compasses while rolling, which I could sell. Those will be included in the profit and loss. And then finally, I bought 25 Harbinger compasses for 10 C each. We bought a ton of Legion compasses for 7 C each, and we bought the Beast duplication compasses for around 18 C on average. We then bought our Gilded Legion Scarabs for 4 C each, Polish Harbingers for 5.5, Gilded Bestiary for 4.5 on average, and then finally Gilded Cartographers for 5 C each. We'll be rolling Kirak on every map at 4 C, giving us a total of 3,901 C in expenses, or 31.2x with the current exchange rate. That is a massive build afoot, and I'm very interested to see if we can make that back, and if so, how much profit can we expect? Well, I'm gonna pass it over to future me here. Hope you guys enjoyed this little bit of an intro breakdown. See you guys on the other side. See ya. Alright guys, let me take you through how I ran my cemetery maps, as well as some very important findings I had along the way. But first, these videos take a massive amount of time and effort, so if you do actually enjoy them, make sure to chuck me a thumbs up, and I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. Alright, let's dive into it. So, cemetery, we were testing how powerful it would be if we did all of the Eldritch altars throughout the map and left the boss until last. How many Eldritch, Chaos, Exalt, and Anomalon Orbs would we get? Well, I made it a point to prioritize that, and in all my maps, I fully ran the map and then I did the boss last, prioritizing the Eldritch currencies wherever it made sense. Of course, I'd rate stuff like Scarabs more highly, but overall, I did go for them quite often, and you'll see the results of that in the profit and loss soon enough. In addition to that, though, I also was testing out big map selling strategies. I had a big plan, and I was going to sell city squares at around 9 C each in bulk. I invested in Gilded Cartography Scarabs, as you saw earlier, and it was a big part of my strategy. However, enter the GGG Watchstone buff. GGG has made map sustain far easier, which is really good, but also does hinder this experiment a little bit. So about 12 maps in is when the map sustain buff was implemented, so you're going to see the absolutely crazy degree of map sustain you can expect with the tree and the Watchstones, but in fact it does impact the profitability of the strategy we have here just a little bit. Overall though, it's still insanely profitable, as I'm sure you can see by the thumbnail and title. But overall, it's not a problem, but you're just going to see how crazy map sustain can get, and the maps should sell just fine in bulk, as it's a very popular layout, being City Square. Alright, let's dive in to the juicy stuff here. Let's talk about the focus of this video, Bestiary. So Bestiary is a really interesting mechanic, which is actually something that is heavily min-maxable, but also has quite a lot of gameplay friction involved with it. So the main thing we need to talk about here is the Menagerie. We'll get into the nitty-gritty in terms of beasts and their profitability and all sorts of stuff like that in a few minutes here when we get to the profit and loss, but let's talk about the Menagerie here. So when you're using a strategy like the one that we're using here, the Menagerie is a finite resource. You can fill it up, and you will fill it up in roughly 50 to 40 maps using the strategy that we have here, or something similar. Now this means that once it's full, you have to make a decision. You can choose to buy hundreds of Bestiary Orbs, investing hundreds of Chaos to clean out your Menagerie, and you know, sell the good ones, sell yellow beasts in bulk on TFT, and that's probably the most profitable way to go about it. Just literally orbing your entire Menagerie, everything and all, and then selling the good stuff and the bulk yellows. or you can do a hybrid approach where you use the best recipes, you know, like the Horizon Orb recipe. You can, you know, use the unique ones and potentially get some good like belts or a shield or something like that. And we'll get into that later. That's an option. That's a bit of a hybrid approach, and that's the one I chose to do in this video. Or you can just say to hell with it and let your menagerie go to the dogs. And this is the most low maintenance and probably the most desirable way to play with the menagerie. And that is essentially that you let your menagerie completely fill up, you orb all of your good beasts, and then you do another 40 or 50 maps, and then as you're mapping, you'll notice a warning continually play every time you capture a beast that beasts are being overwritten. Now, the way that these beasts get overwritten is that every red beast is going to overwrite an existing yellow beast in your menagerie until you essentially have no yellow beasts and just a completely full menagerie of red beasts. Now, of course, you're going to be cherry picking out all of the good red beasts and selling them to other players, so your menagerie is essentially going to end up with a menagerie full of trash red beasts that no one wants and is not worth your time to orb, essentially giving you the worst case scenario. However, this is going to be the cheapest, most effective, and, you know, overall most low maintenance way to play with Bestiary, and it's not really the end of the world. The only thing is, if you're going to want to use your menagerie yourself, you're going to have to orb some of those red beasts and toss them in the trash to make room for, you know, buying some yellow beasts as well as the actual craft you're trying to use in your menagerie. Now, one thing that is also important to note is that yes, the yellow beasts will get consumed and overwritten, but what happens when your menagerie is completely full of red beasts and then you're capturing all more red beasts? Well, in this scenario, it's basically going to take the most old red beasts and replace them with the newest red beasts, meaning that you're still going to be able to capture all of your phenomenal played arachnids and all sorts of stuff like that just fine, and overall it'll be a reasonably okay experience. You're just going to have to grapple with, you know, emptying it out a little bit whenever you want to do a bestiary craft, which is pretty much, you know, all you need to worry about. So overall, there's 3 different options. All of them have different, you know, pros and cons, and overall you will have to make the decision if you invest in Bestiary which one you want to go with. I think the hybrid approach is the best, as it, you know, it'll take a bit more time of you, but overall it'll keep your menagerie reasonably clean. It won't be, you know, all red beasts all the time, and you have a chance at getting some pretty damn cool uniques. All right, so that's going to be everything for the mapping kind of setup here. Hopefully you guys are ready for the profit section. Money time. All right, let me break it down for you. How profitable was Bestiary? Well, overall, we had whopping expenses to make up in the end. I've had to add in 346 Bestiary orbs. As I mentioned earlier, I went with the hybrid approach. I chose to maintain my menagerie to some extent, and that required me to buy quite a few Bestiary orbs. So those are factored into my expenses, but if you're not doing the, you know, maintenance mode, you know, kind of maintaining your menagerie, these won't be too much of an expense for you. However, we also did get quite a lot of currency here. So the expenses totaled up to be at 34 exalts overall, and the revenue was a whopping 121 exalts. Yes, we made quite a lot of currency here. And overall, there's a lot of interesting information in here to really break down. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to preface is that I believe I did get quite lucky with my drops here. Now, I got a ton of very high value drops here, which I've decided I am going to exclude. So let me quickly take you through the full sorting of the loot. So in here, we have all of our good favorite maps, the emblems, the contracts, all of that stuff, you know, the usual. We have all of our high quality essences streaking and above, all of our scarabs, raw currency, etc. And then we also have incubators though, which I've completely excluded because I don't feel confident pricing them. We've got some uniques and a winged scarab I've excluded, as well as a cortex. I think these are outside of what most people would be getting, so I've taken them out. In addition to that, from Bestiary, we did get a squire from doing the shield craft. Of course, I'm not going to include that. I've also excluded the 2 jewels Fortress Covenant from that, as well as the 6 links here, because maybe people aren't going with a hybrid approach, so I'm going to remove them as well. So overall, after all of that, we still made a whopping 87 exalt profit. Now, I'm going to fully break this down, but I think it's fair to say that you maybe could expect to make a bit more if you didn't go with the hybrid approach to Bestiary as I did, or you included some of the more rare drops that you may expect to get from doing this strategy. Now, things I've excluded. So I have obviously excluded all incubators. I've excluded all bad contracts, uniques, quality gems, scouting reports, all bad map layouts, all of the bad contracts, every div card which isn't sellable, you know, everything that wouldn't be instantly sellable or worth your time is out. I like to keep it clean cut for you guys and conservative. Let's dive into where the money came from. And of course, the big question is Bestiary worth it? So in this experiment, obviously I've been so conservative that I think it's fair to say that you should be able to assess this from a low maintenance perspective. As I discussed, the low maintenance approach is going to be best for most people, and this is the approach I would recommend moving forward with Bestiary. You are going to minimize your Bestiary orb costs where mine are very high, and you're going to also maintain all of the big profit that we're going to talk about right now. So in total, how much did we make from Bestiary? So in revenue, we made 2,098 chaos or 16.8 exalts. Overall, our expenses for Bestiary were 1,246. So that's a ROI of 68.38% or 852 chaos. That's a pretty damn good ROI. It's actually better than Harbinger in this experiment overall. So that's pretty damn strong. Now, this is assuming that you have a high Bestiary orb cost, but are foregoing all of the benefits of actually using that mid-tier strategy, meaning the overall profit of Bestiary should actually be higher, which is definitely a pretty damn good thing. So I think it's probably closer to 70 to 75% ROI, which is pretty damn close to doubling your money on the things you purchased. Now, remember, we're using the Beast Dupe Compass as well as the Gilded Bestiary Scarab. Overall, you don't have to use the Beast Dupe. It's probably actually not going to be too worth your time as it's just doubling all the beasts, but it also costs the exact same amount as the Gilded Bestiary. So overall, you're going to be making twice as many beasts, but if you're not too worried about that, you can just use Gilded Bestiary and you're still going to get the same ROI as you would before. It's not going to be any different. It's just you'll be getting the ROI slower. Because your actual expenses will be lower, but your revenue will be lower. So overall, Bestiary, from my perspective, is quite worth it. Now, it's another question altogether, though, whether or not it's worth the points. So the points are very high investment. They're all around the tree, and the question is there a better thing you can invest in? Well, you're going to have to kind of go to my other videos to really determine that. So from, the Strongbox perspective, I would rate it above Strongbox. Its Scarab is fairly cheap, and the ROI on it is quite high. The point investment is somewhat higher, but it's also not so high where it's a deal breaker. And with the new points available to us, which we can now free up from the map sustain buff, well, maybe it is a reasonable choice. Now, let me further break down the Bestiary profit here so you guys kind of understand where the money is coming from. Alright, so there's a number of really, really good beasts, bad beasts, and overall, let me just explain it to you. Okay, so all beasts written in blue here are recipes or beasts that could be part of recipes if you wanted to go with a hybrid approach. That approach is going to be essentially where you come in, you craft a bunch of things, and you can kind of get a little bit of bang for your buck and make a little bit of currency and maintain your menagerie somewhat. The strategy I used in this video. However, it's probably going to take an hour and a half over 100 maps, or maybe even longer, depending on how fast you are at doing it. Having said that though, that is how I got the Squire, as well as 2 Fortress Covenants and a bunch of assorted currencies. So you can see here I got a ton of currencies. Overall, it could be quite profitable, but at the same time, I understand how it might not be. So that's definitely an option. All of the beasts in blue are definitely ones you may want to consider using in those recipes. Let me go over the recipes on hand here if you want to go the hybrid approach. So here are the recipes I spammed doing the hybrid approach. I spammed all of the available Orb of Horizon recipes because Horizons are worth currency, but also can be used in the Scarab recipe. I spammed all of my available Orbs of Binding recipes because they use 2 of the most common beasts you're going to be getting, which are trash, and only 2 yellow beasts, making it a much more favorable ratio for cleaning out Menagerie and maintaining it, saving you currency on Bestiary Orbs in the long run. And then I also opted to use the Belt Craft, which is potential Headhunter / Mage Blood territory. I also used the Glove Craft, which could potentially give you Asenath's Gentle Touch, the Jewel Craft, potentially giving you Inspired Learning or Unnatural Instinct, And finally, I used the Quiver and Shield craft, potentially giving you Maloney's Mechanism or the Squire, and I did end up hitting the Squire. You can also use the Map craft. I'm not entirely sure if this can give you Dorian's Machinarium or the Synthesis maps. I didn't get either of those, but I did get quite a lot of bulk T16 unique maps, which might sell. Also worth considering are the 21 Corrupted Gems. You could hit an Aura, which does sell reasonably well, or you can also go for the fully 6-linked rares, which is at least a Divine Orb at the very least, which is also going to be a reasonable use of your beast in a hybrid approach. Overall, though, if you're looking to, go for a full Monty and orb everything, right now, yellow beasts can be sold for 60 to 1 Exalt. 1 Exalt is worth 125C. You're gonna have to pay 60C of Bestiary Orbs to capture all those, but you can net a 75C profit just on yellow beasts, and you get hundreds of these things. I'm talking 500 or 600 per 50 maps, so you can see how that would add up to be even more profit if you can take actually clicking all those things and also foregoing the opportunity at getting some really cool uniques or gambling or maybe getting something else. Now, of course, this is all up to you to decide. And if you don't want to do any of that and you want to go with the low maintenance, ignore all beasts listed in blue and red and just simply orb all of the ones in yellow, green, or purple. This is essentially going to be the ones that people want to buy or could buy for the most part. Most of these do sell either one at a time or in bulk. Let me go over which ones are most popular. So the main one where most of your money is going to come from are actually Savage Crabs as well as Sakawine Cobras. These two form a single recipe which is able to upgrade maps and add additional modifiers on them, essentially acting as an Exalted Orb for maps. This specific craft actually functions as a way for big groups who use 6 people with magic finders to get even more value out of their already expensive maps. Now, this combo generally sells for about 20 to 30C on TFT if you have bulk of it, but I've recorded it at a very low price of 5C for the Crayket Crabs as well as 7C for the Cobras. So this overall is not a high price. You could get much more for this, but I'm always conservative. I want to make sure you guys aren't being misled, so you could get more for this combo in your bestiary section, leading to an even higher ROI closer to that 100% return, which is pretty damn good. Okay, let me take you through the other things that obviously sell. So we've got Crayket watches here. Those are something that could sell. They're part of a Hunter Slam recipe. Those generally sell in bulk if you do get a buyer, but if everyone's doing bestiary, people probably aren't going to buy them, so maybe just leave them on the bench. They're not really worth orbing and may sit in your stash for quite a few days. Spider Crabs are going to be the access to Craykean's Cove. Those sell in bulk at a 2 to 3C, so you can make your money back on having those. Generally going to be pretty low impact though, you may not want to orb them. The hybrid arachnids are the Fennumus's key. Fennumus key generally sells for about 7C. These do sell in bulk to people who are doing the boss, so you can make a little bit of money off of this. The vultures give you the 6 links. They do sell, or you can use them yourself. The Rex is to Sakawai, the Sakawal's nest, which is, they sell, but they're pretty cheap as well. Let's get on to the actual juicy stuff here though. So the vassals are used in the 30% quality corruption. These sell for about 7 chaos each. These don't sell in bulk, however, people buy them one at a time, so you may or may not want to sell these if you're, kind of really trying to min-max things. The Lynx and Wolf Alphas do sell in bulk for about 10 to 12C each, depending on how many people are crafting at the time, and you do get a fair amount of these. Of course, we've talked about the Cobra already. The Chimeral is definitely a very rare beast, which we'll get into the rarity of all of these in a second here, but they sell for quite a lot, 44 to 50C. The Crayket Moors are very rare as well. They sell for about 20C and are used in all of the free Exalt on the Influence item slams. So those are definitely always in demand. People will PM you for them instantly and get rid of them, which is pretty nice. The Tiger Alpha is the key to Farrell. And lastly, the Split Beast, the Plague Arachnid, is also worth around about 40 to 50C. All right, so how rare are these beasts and how many can you expect to get of them? Well, the reason I said that the Savage Crab and the Cobras are the bulk of your money is because they're worth a reasonable amount of chaos and people buy them in bulk fast, and you get an absolute metric ton of them. So overall, I got 78 crabs as well as 44 cobras. Now the discrepancy here is due to the fact that I have taken Hunt for Christian here to try and get more deep monsters. If I didn't have this, I imagine they would probably be at parity, giving you an equal amount of both. Overall, pretty damn good. You're going to be making a lot of money from these two very common beasts. Next up, let's talk a little bit about the actual spirit beast keys, the spider crab, the hybrid, the feral, tiger alpha, and the rex. So overall, I got a ton of spider crabs here. I got 10 in total, but that's partly in, for the reason that I'm spec'd into Christian. I got 2 tiger alphas. Those are the key to feral, so I did get some, but they're not super common. I got 8 hybrid arachnids. Now, I'm pretty observant in my maps, and I can tell you that I only got 8 of these because one of them was duplicated by the passives down, I believe, over here. It says that red beasts have a chance to appear in pairs, and I observed a phenomenal hybrid arachnid in a pair, and that is why it's overrepresented compared to the other spirit beasts. But overall, I did get a few more of these than the others still. That does remain true. So they're not so unlikely to get, but overall, you will get a few of them. So the Rexes, I actually didn't get any of these hardly, which is quite surprising. I think I got unlucky on the Rexes. Now, it's important to note that you need to divide all of these numbers by 2 if you're not using the Sextant, because I effectively duplicated every beast I captured using the beast duplication Sextant, which is definitely important to note. All right, let's move on to the next one. So obviously you guys have the kind of interesting information here. You can see the numbers. There's a few more that I want to point out here though. Lynx and Wolf Alpha are very common. You're going to get 18 and 22. So that's pretty damn common. You're going to get quite a lot of those. Overall, they will make up, a few hundred chaos, which is pretty damn good. And then the big money ones, the ones in purple, the Chimerals and Moors are exceptionally rare, even with the investment into that node, the Christiani node. I still only got 4 of each, which is quite unfortunate. Tiger Alpha, obviously very rare, and the plague arachnid I got 12 of, which is quite common actually. I should have invested into the hunt for Fennumus, as this was a big money maker. So if you're doing bestiary, I highly recommend grabbing an additional node up here. Even at the expense of Hunt of Christian, I would go for the hunt for Fennumus due to the fact that the Krakic Chimerals are really rare. You're not going to get too many of them, but you are going to get a lot of split beasts, and this will essentially double the amount of split beasts you get, increasing your profit margin quite a lot here. So I would have had 24 plague arachnids potentially in theory, which is overall way better. So yeah, you're gonna get way more money if you spec into Hunt of Fennumus. Ideally you'd go for both of them, maybe get some of the frogs and the kind of ones here. That would be good, but overall you'll have to work at the percentages based on the ratios I have here, because you don't want to reduce the amount of getting cobras too much, otherwise you won't have the cobras to sell, which are also a big money maker. So there is a bit of a balancing act here on which kind of node you want to go for here and manipulate which kind of family you want to appear most. So yeah, definitely pretty interesting, but I think you should definitely be using the hunt for Fennumus and maybe the hunt for Christian on the actual Atlas passive tree. All right, so that's going to be it for Bestiary. At the end of the day, whoops, wrong one. At the end of the day, is Bestiary worth it? In my opinion, yes, it is. If you go with the low maintenance version of it, where you just, sell the good beasts and let your menagerie go to the dogs, it's fine. It's pretty easy to upkeep and you're just going to be making money as you go. All the good ones, sell them on your way. Pretty big ROI, make the adjustments I made, sell a beast I told you to, you're gonna make some pretty good currency. Let's talk a little bit about what else we have going on here, because this was a big experiment with tons of other things to look into. Well, let's dive in. The other thing we were running on our maps was Legion, and we were investing a paltry amount compared to our beast investment. We were investing 575 chaos in total. We were investing 400 in Gilded Legion, as well as 175 in Legion compasses. Well, was it worth it? Well, I can tell you, absolutely it was. Take a look at my tab of emblems over here, and I can tell you right now, it is absurd how good Legion is and how underpriced its materials are right now. It's crazy how much money you can make, and it is all fairly consistent. You are going to make big cash. All right, so Legion, we got a total of 21 exalts of emblems, just emblems alone. Now, I mentioned I excluded incubators. I wanted to make sure I was thorough here, but these incubators are valuable. There is value here. The Harbinger ones, the Kalguran ones, they do sell, and overall, you can expect to make even more profit from Legion if you were to sell these or use them yourself. But let's talk consistency here. So we were making a total of 21 exalts almost from emblems. How much is that compared to our expenses here? So we made 2,680 C of revenue. Our expenses were 575C, giving us a profit raw, straight up, just off emblems of 2,105C. That's an ROI of 366% right out of the gate for Legion. My goodness. And also, we're not investing too heavily into it on the tree. It's all fairly localized to this Eater of Worlds area. So you can invest in Legion fairly easily without having to worry too much about how many points you're spending. And we have more points now to spend with the buff to Atlas passive and, map sustain. Pretty damn good. So yeah, Legion, an absolute killer of a decision. And overall, if you used the Legion Sextant, you can literally straight up double that revenue. Now, I didn't use that, but maybe I will have to in the future. It's crazy. Now, I also have a little bit more to talk about. It's obvious Legion is worth it now. Overall, it's not going to add too much time to your map, but I would recommend using a very strict loot filter when using Legion. And that's not something I've mentioned so far. In this test, I heavily tightened up my loot filter. All singular splinter stacks, with the exception of Templar, as well as Meraketh, are gone. All low currencies like alchemy orbs, binding orbs, all of that kind of stuff is out. Only stacks of these things remain, and 6 sockets are also removed. So the overall profit could have been higher if you include those things, but I'm not interested in picking all that stuff up at this stage in the league, so you can still expect to get pretty damn good profit, and even more if you're willing to do so. But it's going to make Legion a lot more fast and easy to run if you filter out all of the low tier currencies and small splinter stacks. But you're still going to make an absolute killing off of Legion in the long run. Overall, is Legion worth it? Absolutely, it is worth it. Let's move on to the next one. We obviously invested fairly heavily in Harbinger as well here. We spent a whopping 1,200 on Harbinger in expenses. Is it worth it? Well, it's pretty hard to completely evaluate how worth it Harbinger is because it drops all sorts of different stuff. It drops everything in the map because they're just spawning monsters, but then it also drops the stacks of currency splinters. Well, let me dive in and give you guys my best assessment of how good Harbinger is. So overall, you'll notice here in my currency tab, I have an absolute metric ton of Horizon Orbs. Now, Horizon Orbs are reasonably rare drops from the actual map themselves. So I've included a reasonable amount of these Horizon Orbs in my actual calculation here for how much we've made from Harbinger. I think I included about 65% of the horizons in coming from Harbinger, and I think that's a reasonable assessment here. In addition to that, I've also included all of the Ancient Orbs here. We got almost 80 Ancient Orbs, all the Harbinger Orbs, because they only come from Harbinger. And then also in here is 7 Exalts as 13 Exalted Shards, because that's how many we got from Harbinger specifically. I made a point to count every Exalted Orb drop and note where they came from, and I'll talk about that in a second here. But just from Harbinger Shards alone, we got 7 Exalts pure and 13 shards. When you add all of this up together, it gives you a revenue of 1,803 chaos just from Harbingers, excluding all of their other drops, excluding the chaos shards and the full chaos orbs they also drop, which we were picking up. We can't calculate that though because chaos orbs are a pretty fairly common drop, but a percentage of our chaos orbs will have come from Harbinger as well. So it's fair to say this is a conservative estimate of the revenue we got from Harbinger here, and we made a profit of 604 chaos, or a 50% return on investment, excluding all of the drops they drop, which is a really damn good return. It's not in the area or the kind of ballpark of Bestiary, or certainly not Legion, but overall it's definitely pretty damn good because they're dropping maps and stuff like crazy as well. So overall, is Harbinger worth it? Absolutely. I think it is absolutely crazy and is well worth it in the long run and in the short term. All around, it's a very good lead mechanic, and obviously this is using the very, very lowest expectations. And when you have bulk Ancient Orbs, I can tell you, you can charge a very big premium, making the ROI on this even better. All right, is Harbinger worth it? Yes. Okay, let's dive in to a few other questions we had and also answer them, but also give you guys an overview because I want to make sure you guys have the full picture on this 100 Cemetery map farm. All right, so the other thing we wanted to test here is how good it was leaving the boss until last and actually seeing how many Eldritch currency items we got. Well, I have the results here. We got 10 Eldritch Exalted Orbs, 13 Annulments, and 8 Chaos Orbs, as well as quite a few high tier Ickes, as well as a few few embers on the side. Now, this is definitely not that impactful. Overall, we got a few Eldritch currency items before, but we didn't get significantly more to where it was impactful using this strategy. Overall, I would not really worry too much about prioritizing these Eldritch altars with the Eldritch currency items. Overall, it's just not a whole lot of actual extra revenue, and overall, it's not going to make too much impact. You're much better off, prioritizing scarabs and all sorts of stuff like that. And if you come across the boss, just slay it straight away. There's no reason to wait because the actual impact of getting those Eldritch currency items is fairly small at this stage due to the fact they're just not worth enough right now compared to how rare they are over how many maps we did. So overall, not really too worried about whether you kill the boss, like early on or later, but if you can kill the boss first before you kill any monsters, it's obviously a benefit because you can see here our scarab earnings are significantly lower. In the previous test, we got around 6.1-ish exalts worth of scarabs, but that was excluding all of the operative strong boxes as well. In this test though, we got 6.1 exalts worth of scarabs, including all the scarabs from Legion and also including all the scarabs from operative strong boxes. So overall, we made less on scarabs, and I think we also made less on Ickes and Embers. Meaning overall, it's much better to kill the boss first, as we expected, and that's going to mean that you want to be trying to prioritize that wherever possible to give you the better outcomes. Alright, let me tie this all up for you guys and make sure you have the full picture. Okay, so overall, we made a reasonably cool 3.8 exalt of, money with heist. It's generally a pretty consistent money maker, only the good ones. We made 0.9x of sextant sales from the one we were rolling our sextants. General loot, 42.1x. That's all of this stuff like raw currency, fusing, stack decks, GCPs or stuff like that. That's all of that. And then if we break it down further, we got essences at 3.7x. You can see the essence is still pretty good. It makes some money. It's free. Overall, not too bad. The massive emblem and scarab chunk here, which is a big part of our money making. Ickes and Embers, respectable 2.1x. We made 10.4 exalts off of map sales at a conservative price. So I was going to show you guys, I mentioned map sustain is off the hook. Well, check this out, dude. We made a total of 260 maps in sustain. It's 160 maps over the actual limit of map sustain here. And that is in part due to the new buff to map sustain. So overall, I think we got an extra 100 maps or something like that compared to our previous city square strategy. And that's just money in the bank because city squares right now are selling for about 5C in bulk still. It's possible they go down, but that would just make the cost of entry of strategies like this even more worth it. So our expenses would go down as well. But overall, they do sell right now, and it is a pretty dang big money maker, and it more than pays off our gilded cartographer scarabs with that big chunky revenue we got here from our maps. So overall, pretty damn good. Legions also drop a ton of maps. In the future, if the prices go down though, you could probably sub out the Carto Scarab for something else. But pretty damn nice. Definitely would expect that these will probably continue to sell. Conqueror and Guardian maps, again, nothing too impactful, but a 1.8x. Eldritch currency items, already talked about them. They're 1.7x. But overall, the big variance here is going to be the two brothers stashes I got. And I wanted to spend some time a little bit talking about the brothers stashes as well as where all the exalts came from. Okay, let's break down the exalts first. So we already talked about the 7 exalts and the 13 shards from Harbingers. That's a reasonable amount, it's expected, and overall it's pretty good. We also did get another full exalt from one of the Harbingers. It dropped a full one, pretty damn good. Now the remaining exalts, where do they come from? Well, we got 5 exalts raw from legions, so they dropped from the monsters as well as the war hordes. Overall, legions seem to spew out exalts, partly in fact due to the chain of command node here, which I think is very, very impactful. Let me move that so the camera's not covering it up. And then overall, that's pretty damn strong. In addition to that, we also got 3 raw exalts from the map, which, is a little bit above average. Generally, you're getting about 2 per 100 maps, so we got a bit above the average there. And then overall, we got 1 exalt and a ritual as well, which we got throughout the maps, which is pretty lucky, but I thought I'd throw it in. It's within reason. And then we got 2 brothers stashes. Now, both of these brothers stashes actually dropped from Legion. One of them dropped from a Legion monster, and the other one dropped from a Legion warhorde. Well, Legion's just too good, apparently. Overall, though, I expect that you're probably going to be getting closer to 1 Brother Stash, but I haven't done any extensive testing on Brother Stash farming. Maybe I'll get more data in the future, or you can tell me what you guys are getting in terms of your Brother Stash drop rate below. So, let's title it all up. Is everything here worth it? In my opinion, yes, a wild success. Beasts are worth it, Legion is worth it all the way to the bank, and Harbinger is worth it, a pretty good staple. Overall, hope you guys have enjoyed this video and this breakdown of the science. A pretty big profit in the end, 87 exalts, and hope you guys are enjoying the videos. See you next time. Cheers.